Chapter 16. Should children fast? I am often asked about fasting for infants and young children. Is it safe? Should it be attempted? The answer is that children often know instinctively when to fast, and for how long. Let me cite the case of an anxious mother who consulted me about her young son who appeared to be, so far as he was able to carry it out, on a permanent fast. Quote, "My child simply won't eat," the mother told me. "I have to force him. I make him come to the dining table. I make him eat. Unless I force him, he won't touch his food." "Why not leave him alone until he gets hungry?" I suggested. "He never gets hungry. He would starve to death." Many mothers face this problem with their children. Few subjects are more talked about, with more misinformation, than the feeding of children. We hear about loss of appetite, undernourishment, underweight in children, and the fact that a child may be suffering from eating too much is rarely guessed. Yet in 40 years, I have never seen a child starve to death because it refused to eat. I have watched hundreds of them go without food until they became hungry, and I have never seen one that was not soon raising old Ned for food. In the case above, I persuade the mother to give her boy a chance to get hungry to see if he would not do the same. "Wait," I told her. "When he is hungry, he will tell you." He did. When the food vanished, when he was not forced to swallow more than his body demanded or required, he soon began to want to eat normally. In a few days, we had a happy mother and a less unruly boy. She reported, "Dick is now the first one to the table, and we no longer have to force him to swallow every mouthful. Leave the child alone when he refuses food. It is certain that he will become hungry within a reasonable time and will demand food. Abstinence from food is the surest and best appetizer available. It is better than coercion, which tends to create resistance. It is better than tempting them with dainty dishes and flavored and sweetened dishes to appeal to jaded appetites. It is better than feeding vitamins or giving tonics. Let the child go without food until a natural demand for food is made in the form of hunger, and it will be content with plain fare. There will be no need to tempt it with special dishes. No chocolate will have to be added to its milk. Ice cream will not have to be substituted for wholesome food. Tidbits and palate ticklers will no longer be found necessary. Why should a child, any more than an adult, be forced to eat? If there is no physiological demand for food, why should it be forced upon the child? With the majority of well-meaning adults, when they undertake to coax a child to eat, the food with which they tempt the child is usually unsuitable. It is commonly the worst possible selection that is responsible for the loss of desire for food. It is ruinous to the character of the child to bribe it by offering money, a toy, a trip to the movies, or to hold out other inducements to it to eat when there is no natural demand for food. Such means of inducing a child to eat lead inevitably to overeating. Overeating results in temporary loss of desire for food. Candy or cookies between meals destroys the desire to eat. Mothers who permit children to eat between meals should not be surprised if they are not hungry when mealtime arrives. Children often develop poor appetites, quote-unquote, because of the unsuitable character of their diet. McCarrison, who made original study in the field of dietics and later reported on the Hunzas, says, quote, "It seems to me that loss of appetite is one of the most fundamental signs of vitamin deprivation. It is a protective sign, the first signal of impending disaster," unquote. After a brief period of abstinence, it should be understood that when the amount of food taken is reduced, the vitamin needs of the body are correspondingly reduced. The diet of the child should be changed. Give them more fruits and vegetables, fresh and uncooked, and less cereal, bread, potatoes, cookies, pies, and candies. Eliminate all soft drinks. Mothers will no longer have to worry about vitamins for their children if they supply them with the natural sources of vitamins. I quote McCarrison again, quote, "There are no more important ingredients of a properly constituted diet than fruits and vegetables, for they contain vitamins of every class, recognized and unrecognized," unquote. Why feed your child a baked apple when the uncooked apple is more nutritious and far more tasty? Why give it candy made of white sugar, synthetic colors and flavors, wood glue, and other unwholesome substances, as long as there are dates, figs, bananas, and other sweet fruits which are more tasty and more wholesome? There is more vitamin value in a stalk of celery or a head of Bibb lettuce than in all the vitamin pills in the drugstore. An orange or peach will provide wholesome nutriment for your child. A dish of ice cream is about as unwholesome as anything he can take. Soft drinks are poisonous and unfit to swallow. More care in feeding the child will give it better health and save the parents much anxiety and expense. Children's diseases are parents' mistakes. Children lack desire for food when they are ill. Enervated children with gastritis, enlarged tonsils, and adenoids, constipation, diarrhea, feverishness will express no demand for food. They should be permitted to skip a meal or several meals as circumstances warrant, and no effort should be made to force them or coax them to eat. Any unusual excitement of the children, even a trip or a picnic, may use up so much nerve energy that indigestion is produced. Symptoms of indigestion may range all the way from irritability, restlessness, tossing during sleep, bad breath, growing pains, quote unquote, white lines around the mouth, to fever, gastric pains, nausea, vomiting, and great discomfort evidenced by extreme restlessness. When such symptoms are present, no food should be given. If children with indigestion are fed and treated in the customary manner, the state of the stomach and intestinal tract is likely to become putrescent, laying the groundwork for possible serious disease. Infants become enervated from being handled too much, from being carried about, from having their rest broken, and being subjected to noise, too much commotion in the house, by being nursed and trundled too much, by being played with and excited too much, by being subjected to too much heat and cold, by being fed too much, by being drugged for symptoms and inoculated for disease prevention. In dealing with the child, of course, competent hygienic guidance should be sought and followed. When a baby is enervated, the digestive function falters. Indigestion with fermentation and putrefaction of food results. Putrescence, thus evolved, irritates the lining membrane of the stomach and intestine. The membrane of the stomach, bowel, or air passage becomes a site of supplementary or compensatory excretion, the eliminating process being named, according to its location, as a cold, bronchitis, gastrus, diarrhea, etc. There may be a slight feverish condition accompanied by a quote-unquote sick stomach or a slight cough. The baby is restless and uneasy, sleepless, fretful. The restlessness is likely to be interrupted as hunger and the child may be fed. If the food is discontinued at once, the slight indigestion quickly ends. The restlessness and fretfulness subsides. If it is fed and handled, many parents walk the floor with sick infants. The irritableness, fretfulness, and feverishness increase. If this program is continued, vomiting and diarrhea may ensue, and the symptom complex may be named enteritis, cholera, infantum, colitis, or dysentery. If the lungs are selected as fontanelles through which to excrete the excess toxin, the symptom complex may be named pneumonia. If eruptions appear on the skin, the disease will be named as hives, measles, scarlet fever, or smallpox. In childhood, wrote Dr. Oswald, chronic dyspepsia dyspepsia. Chronic dyspepsia is in nearly all cases the effect of chronic medication. Indigestion is not an hereditary complaint. A dietetic sin per excessum, a quantitative surfeit with sweet meats and pastry, may derange the digestive process for a few hours or so, but the trouble passes by with the holidays. Lock up the shortcakes, administer a glass of cold water, and my life for yours, then on Monday morning, the little glutton will be ready to climb the steepest hill in the country. But stuff him with liver pills, drench him with cough syrup and paregoric, and in a month or two, he will not be able to satisfy the cravings of the inner boy without assisting nature with a patent stimulant. Babies and young children are prone to develop spasms as a consequence of severe indigestion. Each paroxysm scares the wits out of the parents, although it is usual for the youngster to be as well as ever the following day. As soon as the child recovers from the acute indigestion, the spasms cease. The child with indigestion should not be fed. Sometimes an older child, suffering with a mild feverish condition and inflammation of the digestive tract, will imagine that he is hungry and will demand food. This demand should not be acceded to. Feeding will only serve to increase the discomfort and retard his recovery. Hunger here is not genuine, but most always only in the mind. Gastritis is inflammation of the stomach. It may be immediately occasioned by overfeeding or eating freely of candy. When a baby becomes enervated from too much excitement, too much handling, overclothing, cold, or in any other way, resulting in inhibition of excretion, a channel of compensatory or supplementary elimination is established through which to expel the accumulated toxin. The mucous membranes of the body are favorite channels through which fontanelles, openings for use and discharge of excretions, are established for elimination purposes. If, as a consequence of local irritation from overeating or candy eating, for example, the lining of the stomach is requisitioned to do vicarious duty, the baby has gastritis or indigestion. If the lining of the intestine or colon is chosen for supplementary services, a diarrhea will develop. Perhaps a week or longer before the beginning of a fever, the observant mother may notice white specks in the bowel movements of her baby. These mean that the milk is not being well digested, perhaps due to overfeeding. The white specks may vary from small white milk curds throughout the stool to an amount of milk curd that makes up to 2/3 or 3/4 of the stool. The stool is gray, the consistency of putty. It is composed largely of undigested milk curd. If the stool is sour, this indicates fermentation. If the condition is corrected at this stage, nothing further will develop, but if not immediately corrected, inflammation of the stomach, small intestine, and large intestine will develop. If the indigestion is confined to the stomach, the child will be restless, irritable, and feverish. At first, there will be vomiting of foodstuff. This is soon followed by vomiting of water and mucus, which may be slightly tinged with yellow. If food is withheld and water given in small doses, this crisis will end in a day or 3 or 4 days. The baby is likely to be thirsty, and mothers are prone to mistake this for hunger and to feed. The food will be vomited. Even water is frequently ejected. Water, when given, should be warm and taken in small amounts. It is important for mothers to know that it is not a kindness on their part to feed a sick child. Food should always be withheld in stomach and intestinal diseases. In short, while always acting under proper hygienic direction with your child, do all that you can to let the natural tools of rest and peace and quiet restore the child if there is upset or illness, or even if it is only a question of how much he wants to eat. For there are ways in which the instinctive wisdom of the infant or child in such matters may be far greater than we could possibly guess.